Hello and welcome to this lesson about transformations on the coordinate plane, part 2. The learning target for this video is going to be applying and describing rotations around the origin. And so this will round out our transformations on the coordinate plane. We've already talked about translations and reflections. Now we're about rotations. So the basics. First, let's start off talking about the different ways we could go about with a rotation. We have different directions. So we have clockwise and we have counterclockwise. And I'm just going to write, might not write it all out. All right, counterclockwise. Okay, so if we're going clockwise, we're going to be going from left to right, like that. If we're going counterclockwise, we're going the other way around. So we're going to be spinning, instead of spinning, actually, so clockwise will be spinning to the right, and counterclockwise will be spinning to the left. The next thing we need to understand is sort of the different sort of ways we can, the different quantities we can rotate. So what we can do is 90 degrees, and essentially what that means is the next quadrant. So to the left or right, depending on if you're going counterclockwise or clockwise. 180 degrees is going to refer to 2 quadrants. And finally, 270 degrees is going to be 3 quadrants, which is actually the same as doing 90 degrees in the opposite direction. So that's some of the basic terminology. Now let's talk about some of the rules. So let's first of all identify what A is. So we have a point here to kind of reference. Our point A is at 4, 5. Now if I want to rotate it 90 degrees to the, let's just say counterclockwise. So let's go with the new color here. Rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. That's what CC is going to stand for. I'm going to take my original XY coordinate, and the way the rotation works is we're going to go Y, X. But then something else needs to change. Because if we flop just the Y and the X, all that's going to happen is we'll have a point that goes, let's see here, right there. That doesn't do us much good. We need to be way over here. So what's going to change is the sign on that first number. Okay, so you're going to flip the X and Y, and you're going to make that first one negative. Okay, so given the numbers that we have, we started off with 4, 5. To rotate it counterclockwise 90 degrees, we're going to have -5, 4. And so let's go with -5, 4. There we go. And it's as if we rotated this thing 90 degrees that way. Now, let's go with another color. Let's go with a rotate. It's going to be somewhat similar, CC, but this time we're going to jump the gun and go to 270 degrees. So what that means is we're going to go all the way around to this quadrant. And so if that's the case, we'll start off with our XY, and it becomes Y, X. So we're going to flip those. But this time what we're going to do is we're going to change that second coordinate. So in this case, our point is going to go from being 4, 5 to being 5, -4. So let's go 5, -4, and there we go. Finally, let's talk about what's going to happen if we ended up rotating 180 degrees counterclockwise. Now if we rotate 180 degrees, our XY will stay the same, but there's going to be one change, and that is they're both going to switch over to be negative. So our 4, 5 simply becomes -4, -5. Go back up here, -4, -5, and there we go. Now, where this gets tricky is what happens if we're going 90 degrees, or if we go 90 degrees clockwise. So if we're going this direction, if that's the case, you kind of have to think on your feet here, apply some of your reflection skills. Essentially, what's going to happen is if we have anything that's at 90 degrees or 270 degrees, you're always going to be flopping X and Y. So we'll have Y or XY is going to become some variation of Y comma X. Then you need to think on your feet. Again, depending counterclockwise, clockwise, where you're starting, stuff like that, which one becomes negative. If we're going 180 degrees, you will always have X comma Y, and then it's just going to change the sign to negative X comma negative Y. Now, this was a simple example with 1 point. Let's kick it up a notch and take a look at an example with an actual shape here. And what we're going to do is we'll do 2 problems. For our first problem, we will rotate clockwise. That's what that T is going to stand for. Just, well, let's go 270 degrees. Okay, so if I'm rotating clockwise 270 degrees, that means I'm going over 3 quadrants. Now notice, I'm doing this a different direction than I did the previous example. So again, I have to think what's going to happen. Well, if I see 270, that means that my X, Y are going to swap places. And I have to think about what sign really changes. Well, over here, all these X values are negative, so this first one should become negative. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out what all these points are. So point A is at 4, 6 still. Point B is at 2, 2. Actually, I'm going to erase that. I'm going to need that space. 2, 2. There we go. Point C is at 5, 1. And point D is at 8, 3. Okay, so now what I have to do is just take each one of these points and I have to apply that rotation. So my new A is going to be 6, 4, swap the X and the Y, and make that first one negative. My new B is going to follow that similar pattern. Fortunately, this is pretty easy because it is 2 and 2, but that first one's got to be negative. My new C is going to be, again, 1, 5, switch the X and the Y, make the first one negative, and my new D will be 3, 8, first one negative. And now let's start plotting those. So let's see here, negative 6, positive 4, negative 2, 2, that's 2, 1, negative 2, 2, all right, negative 1, 5 would be right about there, and then negative 3, 8 is right there, and there's my new shape. And again, it looks like I just have spun that graph around. In fact, let's try it. Let's see what happens here. I'm going to rotate. Is it going to work? Will this thing work? Uh-oh, very careful, very careful, very careful. And you can kind of see it kind of works. I think I twisted some things around there a little bit, but that's a good, it kind of really shows you that whole process of how this rotation thing works there. So again, what we're just going to do is rotate, or you have to think on your feet a little bit. If it's 270 or 90, you're swapping X and Y. Otherwise, you're keeping it the same. And let's actually do that for our final example. So for the final one, we'll go counterclockwise 180 degrees. And so all that means is that my XYs are going to stay the same, but they become negative. So my new A is going to become negative 4, negative 6. My new B is going to become negative 2, negative 2. My new C is going to be negative 5, negative 1. And my new D is going to be negative 8, negative 3. And so from there, do my rotation. So let's see here, negative 4, negative 6, negative 2, 2, negative 5, 1, and negative 8, 3. Yeah, 3. Okay, cool. Yes, there we go. Boom, 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 boom. I've rotated that 180 degrees. All right, so this is a nice little introduction to how we do the rotations. One thing I would like to throw out there is that if we had points kind of all over our graph, so let's just say we had to rotate a shape that was right about, let's just go right there. Some of these negatives might switch over. So like, as we're going over to negative x, negative y, the two we might get back-to-back negatives, thus making it a positive number. But you should probably encounter that in your practice. Speaking of which, good luck with your practice or homework, and let me know if you have any questions.